It's U of L Today on 93.9 The Ville. Here's your host, Mark Hebert.
And welcome to a special edition of U of L Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville. As all of you know by now, the NCAA has wrapped up its investigation and review of U of L's appeal in the case against the men's basketball program. And the two guys who were thrust into the middle of that episode were Interim President Dr. Postel and Interim Athletics Director Vince Tyra. They are here to answer a few of the lingering questions about that chapter of U of L's history, but also to talk about what's to come and all the positive stuff. I know you're not hearing a lot about it, but a lot of the positive stuff that's going on both in the athletics department and on the academic and research side of the university. So welcome back, gentlemen. Good to see you.
Thanks for having us again, Mark.
Yeah. All right. What's been the fallout? Last week, the NCAA came down with their final decision. What's been the fallout on campus and around the community as you guys see it?
Well, I would say, I was at a good proxy is probably the women's game last night. And I think fans were, you've got both. You've got some that are happy to get it behind us, want to move on, don't want to spend any more time and effort and dollars on it, and just they're emotional. They love to have the banners, but they're being practical and realistic that, what are our real chances of winning an appeal. Then you have the other gamut, which is the other guardrail that's, it's pretty emotional. That feels like we should fight to the end to maintain the banner but at the same time, I guess in talking to some of those, they just want to understand, is there really a chance? And going into an NCAA appeal to begin with is a low percentage, and then appeal and a lost appeal is even more difficult. And they want to understand the time and effort. And I think just providing them clear information and factual information is helpful. And in some cases, they don't have that. They just quickly think about other cases that occurred once upon a time.
And point to the other guys that happened to them. Dr. Postel, what have you been hearing from folks on campus and off?
Sure. Well, it's an emotional topic. Obviously, people feel passionately about our athletics program and about the University of Louisville, which is a great thing. That's one of the reasons we do well, is we have fans and faculty and staff and students who are really passionate about us and our program. So I think this is expected. The thing is, this has been going on now for a couple of years, and so even though people are passionate about it, some fatigue has set in, and I think people realize that there's a lot of time and energy that is invested to keep emotions around a topic so high. And as you alluded to a minute ago, we have so many exciting things that we want to spend our time and talent, pursuing. At some point, you have to really focus your energy on the future and on things that really are going to return something to the university as opposed to continuing a fight.
All right. So have either of you had any discussions with Notre Dame or anybody else on this issue? Because it seems like the one thing that all fans are in agreement on is the NCAA is the bad guy. If you listen to fans and even folks on campus, faculty and staff. And so has anybody talked to or even considered talking to Notre Dame or anybody about, what you do going forward or what they're going to do?
Well, first, I'll go back to your point. I think it is unanimous about the NCAA. That part of the conversation I've had with fans and donors and so forth is consistent. I'd even say with our student athletes who probably know less of the facts. But as it relates to Notre Dame, I had the opportunity last week. We had our ACC AD meetings. We were together for a few days, and without knowing that this was coming this week, last week, Jack Swarbrick and I did get a chance to sit down. We had the same infraction appeals committee. The same four individuals on their case was on our case, ironically. And their decision came right as we were heading down to the meeting. So it was unfortunate that I'm getting to read that the same individuals ruled against them, knowing that our situation was pending. I think he has similar sentiment. You've read it in their president. You've read it in their announcements. I mean, they're very discouraged, very disappointed. Their fan base is also very discouraged. But at the same time, he has said the same thing, that more of them want to move on. That you're talking about going back in 2000, I think 12, 13, similar time frame for them as well. And they've got the fatigue. They're done with it. They want to move on. They made a very strong, bold statement against the ruling, and I think it was clear that bold statement was also saying, we're done, this is it, this is our statement, we're moving on.
Okay. Dr. Postel, same thing? I assume you haven't had any discussions with
I have not. I've spoken to Vince about this and certainly read the president's letter. And, the thing is, these situations are unique. The overlap here was the people on the appeals committee were the same, but the circumstances were completely different. And the Committee on Infractions has such broad discretion in how it determines a penalty for some specific act that they have identified, that creates a situation where there's really no baseline to compare it to. Every situation is unique.
We're talking with Dr. Greg Postel, who's the interim president of the University of Louisville, and Vince Tyra, who is the interim athletic director at the University of Louisville. And we'll get to some stuff that's been going on in the athletic department other than basketball here in a second, but I do want to ask a few more questions. As you know, late last week there was a story on Yahoo Sports that basically implicated a number of players from programs all over the country as potentially having violated NCAA rules. So, Vince, you're the guy sitting in the hot seat now. Fans are now starting to talk about, all right, who's the next coach of the University of Louisville going to be? How do you go look for a basketball coach when all of these programs, all of these major programs, may have been tainted or may be tainted by an NCAA investigation?
I think we knew we were going to have a higher scrutiny anyways. I mean, it was suggested last October when our situation occurred that there was going to be more than us, right? When it came out, there was a handful, and that there was broader than what the original handful were listed, us included. And so I think at that point, we've been clear in the department that we need to be better at thinking about recruiting players and hiring staff, and with a greater level of scrutiny than we ever have before. With that goes the head coach. So I think that it's going to be hard for many coaches inside of what we're talking about and the top programs not to escape what's going on. And I think our view is not to react to any one report and to just see as things go out, deal with the facts, not the emotions, or frankly, even some of the articles. We know in firsthand that what comes out in articles is not always factual, correct?
Right.
And I think that our view is to just soak it in as we go. But as we are screening candidates, including our own, we had to do this with David and coming in and thinking about other potential candidates for that position, we'll use that same scrutiny. And, right or wrong, there's a lot more information out now to do that with than there would have been last year or 2 years ago, today, because there's so much work going on behalf of legal entities as well as, the editorial or I should say journalism activity. So there's a lot more information available to us than there ever would have been.
Dr. Postel, wouldn't it be pragmatic for if Vince is the athletic director and has to hire the next basketball coach to have something in that contract that says, if you're found guilty of NCAA violations or whatever, that your contract may be voided, or if Vince is the next guy, I guess put something in his contract to say something like that. Is that what the university's looking at doing?
No question about it. There's language like that in most of our contracts today, and we're actually spending time right now looking at that, making sure the language is fair to individuals we would hire, but also protective to the university because, as we're discussing, things do arise. Vince did a great job of describing this a moment ago, but what I would add is that, this problem is not unique to the University of Louisville. All universities with major athletic programs have to recruit from time to time, and the fact that the problems that are being identified seem to be broader than perhaps initially imagined places everyone in a difficult situation. As he said, you have to increase your scrutiny, and then you have to have contractual language that protects the institution if, God forbid, you hired someone who also had a problem.
Right. We're talking with Dr. Greg Postel and Vince Tyra from the University of Louisville. And we're talking about, the fallout from the basketball investigation and looking forward, I guess. So do either of you feel constricted on what you can say about the NCAA investigation or going forward, because the University of Louisville already is at least looking at the potential for another NCAA investigation at some point down the road as fallout from this FBI thing? So do you feel like you don't want to sue the NCAA, you don't want to say anything bad about them because here they come again at some point? Is that a factor or not?
Well, we're free to talk about the matter that has just concluded because there was no FBI investigation or anything associated with that. That was purely a matter between the university and the NCAA. As far as the other matter, the more recent matter that has come to light, there we are limited in what we're able to say because it's an ongoing investigation involving the FBI, and we've been asked to not discuss matters that relate to pending investigations. So we do have to limit what we say. We've had no communication at all with the NCAA about that new matter.
But the FBI has asked for some documents and other things, I assume, Vince.
They've had requests. We've been cooperative in any way, and hopefully all the individuals involved will be.
All right, Vince, you've been on the job as the interim athletic director for, how many months now?
4.5 months.
4.5 months. All right, when you walked into the job, You got a chance to kind of look around. You're a business guy. What'd you find that absolutely needed to change, and what'd you find that you said, you know what, they're running things really well here?
Well, I think the good thing is I got to inherit quite a few good things. I mean, everybody's clear on the facilities we have. There was a lot of talent in the department, and for that, I'm very thankful to have that. We obviously had the situations at hand that we've been talking about, and I knew that on the way in, and that's something you just deal with. But I think in terms of the go forward, our view was to try to look at, is the structure appropriate for what we want to do with the department, and we did make some tweaks there in terms of the organizational structure. And because we had a retirement of Kevin Miller, a very senior person, wore a lot of hats, and Christine Simatoklis, husband, and been offered a great opportunity elsewhere. They relocating. She also wore a number of hats. It availed us an opportunity to really do a whiteboard and think about the positions before the people. And as we laid out that structure that I thought would be suitable for today's environment in the NCAA and for University of Louisville, then we filled back in the talent, and that's been helpful. I think in terms of thinking about professional development inside the department and getting people going in the right direction and learning and how to interview and how to do appraisals and how you communicate. It sounds crazy, but in today's environment, everybody's texting and they're cryptic. We also need to be formal. So there's a number of things we're doing there. I think marketing side, back to more grassroots marketing than in terms of how to grow the programs and get people engaged, particularly the fans. There's a big emphasis on the fan engagement. The student engagement has been important to us. So I think all those things are the things we've been focused on, along with the other great projects, including the stadium expansion. So I was in meetings this morning on that, trying to bring this to fruition.
And Dr. Postel, when he was hired, what did you tell him?
Well, much of it was public, so it was pretty clear.
Yes, it was.
Similar to my situation, right. months earlier. Many of the challenges.
Jump in the pool with me. Was that what you told
we
him?
faced? Yeah. So when you go into a situation with your eyes open, I guess you can't complain much. You know what you have, and you're willing to deal with that. But Vince has been an incredible partner and has shown great initiative, facing things directly and solving them very quickly. I think this is a time in the history of the university where a really good relationship between the president's office and the athletic director's office is key. There are so many moving pieces. We have wonderful facilities, but they're getting older and they need remodeling. We've got a stadium that's being expanded, a major project there. We're trying to find out how to maximize the number of fans we can have attend our events when there's a national tendency toward smaller attendance at some of these games. We have some people to hire. We have some people retiring. So there are a lot of moving pieces. And if there isn't a really good communication between our offices, it would be very easy for things to get off track. So thankfully, that's not the case. We work closely together. We think a lot alike, and it's been challenging, but we're making progress.
Listening to Dr. Greg Postel and Vince Tyra from the University of Louisville talking about what's going on in the athletics department and at the university as a whole. Vince, I guess purely selfish here, I'm just going to say this, purely selfish, is that the relationship between the athletic department and the academic side and the folks we work with in your department has just been improved dramatically. So thank you to you and your staff for that.
Thank you.
Dr. Postel mentioned attendance. I mean, let's face it, it's easy to see. You can see some of the empty seats. Is that the biggest concern of the athletic department, other than finding a new basketball coach or hiring the current one? Is that the biggest concern of the athletic department and you right now?
Yeah, I don't know that it's the attendance that worries me, because that's just another issue to deal with. It is one, and we do talk about it. I'd say the biggest today is the tax reform. We're talking about donor tax reform in terms of that charitable tax, understanding the implications of that with our donors. There's an excise tax that's out there as well related to compensation above $1 million for your top people, and we're trying to figure out how to deal with that and how that's going to be sorted out, and whether that stays around a long time, whether that's repealed. I think we got scooped up in some legislation that went about as quickly as you could ever see it in a job tax cuts bill, and it's unfortunate. That's probably the first and foremost. I think the attendance is important for sure, and having our fan base there. And we've been doing things to get fan engagement, whether it be through technology, experiences. I mentioned the grassroots marketing. We have more to come. The students, I think that there's initiatives we need to take as the athletic department with those students. We're going to roll some of those out as we get to the fall and the next year's football and basketball and so forth. So we're not going to sit back and wait for that to get better. I think our view is, what can we do on our end? Don't be a victim to it, but be proactive on how we engage them. And it's not just giving them a T-shirt. It's making it easy for them, whether we have to school bus them down or having to, teaching them cheers. I just came from Cameron Indoor Arena, where that's really well scripted and the students are, certainly engaged. I use my phone to video that to bring back as evidence when I meet with the students to talk about things we need to do, but it's not them. We got to do this together, and it's got to be engaging.
What do you tell fans that are out there? And there's a few of them. I'd say the majority of fans are, they're U of L fans. They're going to be U of L fans in the future. They're maybe a little down right now, as I think we all are. But what do you tell those fans who say, you know what, I'm giving up my tickets. I'm not going to go to athletic events. What do you tell that fan?
Well, I think I'd tell them, you're similar to the NCAA. You're penalizing us for the past and things that occurred a handful of years ago. That's unfortunate that you're mocking the institution that you're now following. And I would say that your head should be in the spirit of going forward and not back. And that as I've met with our community leaders, some of our largest corporate sponsors and CEOs, I challenge them on just that. I came into this to provide leadership and get this thing going in the right direction. They should do the same. So my expectations to them are to be a community leader, whether it be on the academic or the athletic side, and a step ahead and accept these roles as we ask them to get involved in volunteers on committees, whether it be the foundation, the board, what have you. Be more vocal, and don't be afraid to step up and say you're supporting U of L. You should be proud of what you've been a part of historically, and you've had your name on these facilities or what have you. You should be going forward, and this is a time not to step back and wait for things to get better. They don't get better without leadership. And so my view is, when I talk to, without naming names, I've had probably 10 of these in the last 2 weeks, and 2 of them yesterday, where I'm challenging these corporate leaders to step forth and show their leadership. There is a timing for that. I don't know that today is it, because it would almost look corny that they're doing it right after what happened in the NCAA, but I do think as we get some positions settled here in the university, and particularly, selfishly the AD and the head coach, but I think as the president's position gets resolved, there's a time where they say, we're renewing our sponsorship, or we're doing these things, and we have renewed faith in what's going on as well in terms of spirit of going forward.
And Dr. Postel, what are you hearing from donors to the university that may not necessarily be big donors to athletics, but are reading what's in the headlines and the newspapers and those kinds of things? What are you telling those folks, and what are you hearing from those folks?
Sure. Well, we spend a lot of time talking to existing donors and potential donors, and it's a big part of our outreach and our relationship with the community. And I think that a lot of these people realize that all businesses go through cycles. Leaders come and go. Demand for product goes up and down. Companies need to refresh their look, refresh their marketing, make sure that people understand why they should be passionate about the university and the various missions that it supports. And some of our donors have been sort of in a holding pattern as they watch this transition take place. And I don't believe that most of them by far have lost their baseline love for the university and their willingness to help it. But they've wanted to make sure that the dust is settling before they feel safe putting their money back into the university. And so that is starting to change. And my conversations are uniformly pleasant. I don't always walk away with a check, but I walk away knowing that there'll be a day soon when I will walk away with a check, because they want to support the university. It's a very, very small number who have truly disappeared.
They're well aware that the academic mission and the research mission of the university is, at least on their dartboard, is the one that they're really targeting, right?
The missions are still there.
Yeah. Okay. Vince, I got to let you go, but one question I got. Academics was something that the U of L athletics department has done well for years and years and years. Our student athletes are always among the top in the NCAA grading scale, those kinds of things. Has that staff pretty much stayed intact, and are they still the guys that are running the show over there in terms of student athletes?
Yeah, all this, Scott, Marvin Mitchell, Alyssa Murphy. Yes, they're all the same. Justin Ruffin. We have the same crew put together. Actually looking at enhancing it, thinking about our GAs and tutors and so forth. But no, and that, as you know, that's a terrific relationship with the university. And as we have in football recruits, we generally have professors or deans that come over and sit with the families, whatever their particular intended study is, and we get with them and educate them on what's going on and the benefits of the university.
Let's talk about some other issues facing the university. One is the budget. Where is the university on its budget, and what do you expect in the coming fiscal year once the legislature's done?
Well, so this is the time of year when we spend an awful lot of time thinking about our budget, and that's true every year. This is the cycle that we go through, and the way we're managing it this year is we've decided to spend the entire month of February doing what we're calling a budget listening tour. So I have been going around with our interim chief financial officer to every venue you can imagine: the faculty senate, the staff senate, the student senate, the council of administrative officers. We had a budget survey. 1,699 faculty and staff filled this survey out. We're having 2 budget forums, one on Belknap, one on Health Sciences campus. Just lots and lots of venues for people to provide great ideas, ask questions, express their concerns. And it's been extraordinarily helpful because we've come up with many ideas, and we feel that this year's budget, people will feel some sense of ownership that they have contributed to the product. We suspect the likelihood is pretty high the state will cut our,
probably beyond pretty high.
Our general appropriations budget. But as I tell people, that's one line item on the budget. The budget is not defined simply by that change. It's one of hundreds of line items, and obviously we seek to maximize every line item. So we're working to enhance revenue. We're looking to be careful about how we spend money. If we need to spend money, absolutely we will. If there are ways to economize or to avoid unnecessary expenses, of course we'll do that as well. And at the end of the day, we will have a balanced budget. I have no question about it.
Do you think you're going to have to lay off folks and freeze positions like we've had? We've had hiring freeze for I don't know how many months now.
There's no plan to lay any employees off. And the hiring freeze that people have discussed is really a misnomer. There's a funny term. We call it's been a hiring frost. And it's a funny term. But what that means is that when employees retire or resign and a position comes open because a person has voluntarily left a position, rather than just automatically filling it, we have a group that sits down and analyzes whether that position should be refilled or not. And over the course of the last year, about 86% of the requests to refill positions have been honored. Right, so there have been some that haven't, so that's hence the frost.
Right.
But it hasn't been a
Not
freeze,
yeah.
not by any means.
Okay. And what have you been talking to legislators about? You've been to Frankfurt a number of times during the legislative session. What do you tell them when you're looking at a budget cut and they say, sorry, we got to make ends meet? You telling them, hey, why don't you approve casinos or something, or what are you telling them?
Well, so our message is very clear. Education is incredibly important. It's incredibly important in all states, but particularly in Kentucky, where a smaller percentage of high school graduates earn a college degree than we'd like to see. There are known workforce needs at the state level and at the local level where educated employees are in short supply. We've actually participated very recently in a refresh of an economic impact study where we show the impact the University of Louisville has on the Metro Louisville area, on the Commonwealth, in terms of creation of jobs, the tax base that generates, the industries that exist here because of what we do, and it's really dramatic. So we have a terrific story to tell. That said, the General Assembly has a whole list of problems and a whole list of people with good stories to tell. So it's a competitive environment.
New partnerships with industry. There have been a few of them here in the past couple of months. Is the university working towards that? I mean, you got the GE First Bill thing, you got the Hive with Kindred, and Giddy with GE and some others. How hard is the university working to try and get other industrial partners to work with the university in tandem?
Well, we're working on this diligently, and I want to be clear that we are not pursuing relationships that I would describe as speculative. Okay, that was done in the past. It didn't work so well. The university lost money on that, and so we're not trying to replicate that experiment. What we're doing is we are partnering with existing companies like Hire and Kindred. You mentioned a couple of them, and others. The existing companies that are looking for industry-academic relationships where we can mutually benefit. They rent space in buildings we own. They work with our students, with our faculty. We're not putting our resources at risk. We're partnering with them to produce new products or enhance existing products. And so we have a division within our Office of Executive Vice President for Research and Innovation that is focused solely on analyzing future collaborations like this. And we probably have close to 100 companies that most of whom have approached us that we're sitting down with and thinking through, is this something that aligns with the talent and the interests we have here at the university? And if so, what would a partnership look like? So I think you'll see over time a manageable but real number of these new relationships emerge, and each time there is one, we'll have a big news story around it because these are exciting developments in the life of the university.
Talking with Dr. Greg Postel, the interim president of the University of Louisville. How has recruitment been impacted, if at all, by the controversies in the basketball program? And what's been the impact on students, do you think, on the campus at the University of Louisville? Kind of a two-part question there.
Yeah, two parts. So I'm happy to say that recruitment has not suffered. Our applications are up almost 3,000 over last year. Now, of course, not all those students will come, but if you do a year-over-year analysis, there's a lot of interest in the University of Louisville, part of which is because we're going out into a broader territory with sort of a regional strategy for recruitment, even to adjoining states. And so we're being very intentional about trying to grow the size of the student population. And so we're seeing that start to pay off in terms of the number of people who are expressing interest and doing initial applications. We've had no problems recruiting faculty. We've recruited a couple of deans recently, some vice presidents that are in the pipeline, and great candidates are applying for these jobs. So I don't think there's been negative impact. Your other part is people who are here, students and faculty, and there's been a hit to the morale. And we talked earlier about the term fatigue. People are tired, really, of hearing about and dealing with things that happened, years and years ago, and are ready to focus on the future. And we're trying very, very hard to keep people focused on, looking ahead, not looking back.
You came from the health sciences campus, which really focuses on a lot of research. A lot of the big research projects at the University of Louisville are downtown in that part of the campus. How would you characterize the research operation at the University of Louisville? Dr. Bill Pierce is retired. Where are we right now in terms of research? Good place, bad place, need more? What?
I think we're in a good place, but I'll add a caveat that we can't become complacent. So we've had a very good year, and our research expenditures and our extramural funding are at an all-time high because of the maturation of some projects that have been in the pipeline for some time. Research takes time to mature. And so I think we can build on that. Now, that said, we have to be mindful of the fact that it's necessary for universities to recruit younger and more researchers so that the pipeline remains full. A lot of universities find themselves with an aging research workforce, and they have great results, and then people start to retire, and it drops off precipitously. And we're aware of that danger, and so we're looking carefully at what needs to be done to prevent that.
All right. Final word from Dr. Greg Postel to fans, faculty, staff, and just supporters of the University of Louisville.
It's a great time to help us look forward, support the university in any way possible. If it's students apply to come here, you get a great education here. If it's donors, we need support, and if you help us, we'll put the money to good use and make sure you see that.
Dr. Greg Postel, always good to see you.
Thank
for
you.
being on the show.
I appreciate
All right,
it, Mark.
that'll about do it for this edition of UofL Today with Mark Hebert, which you can hear every Monday and Tuesday night on 93.9 The Ville. You can also listen to the podcast of the shows on SoundCloud and check some of them out on Metro TV and on KETKY as well. Check out all the UofL news, videos, and events at UofLnews.com. Thanks for listening to UofL Today with Mark Hebert. Go Cards!